All right, how's everybody doing today? Hotep, hey, this is Michael Imhotep, the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, writer, and historian. So it is Friday, February 11th, 2022, and we are live. So I wanted to come on and talk for a few minutes about the online class that I teach on the weekend, on Saturdays and Sundays, two of them, dealing with African history, African American history. We know this is Black History Month, African American History Month. So there's a 10-week online class that I teach called Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Okay. And Kemet, one of the original names for Egypt. This is a 10-week online class that I teach, and we deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. So I'm going to do a brief overview of this 10-week online course. I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips, all of that. All right. All right, so how's everybody doing today? Share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in as well. And you can register for this class. We have information at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com about this class. And I'll give you the information also so you can register for this 10-week online class. So we see that African-American history is under attack. We see these anti-critical race theory laws being passed in various state legislatures, and you have about 34 since 2020 you've had 14 states that have imposed various types of critical race theory laws. And this is a piece here from Axios.com. New rules are limiting how teachers can teach Black History Month. New rules are limiting how teachers can teach Black History Month. And this is causing, we see this attack on our history, but especially we see it coming from these critical race theory laws. Okay. So some of the things that we deal with in the class are the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors. We deal with shocking archaeological discoveries that are causing experts to rethink everything. We deal with how insurance companies that took out policies on slave ships and enslaved Africans on the plantations. We deal with Freemasonry, the origins of Freemasonry, America and the Founding Fathers, origins of the term America, Africa, and more. And we take you throughout history as well. We take you throughout history. We deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. These are just a few of the things that we look at in the class, and we go through and look at history chronologically. Also, we see these attacks, and these are different stories that I've covered here on the African History Network as well. Mock slave auctions, racist lessons, how U.S. history class often traumatizes, dehumanizes Black students. This is a piece from March of 2021 from USA Today. Then also Republican state lawmakers want to punish schools that teach the 1619 Project. Okay. And this is from February of 2021. All right. We'll come back to that. This is one of my teachers, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, who correctly teaches us whoever controls the images controls your self-esteem, self-respect, and self-development. Whoever controls the history controls the vision. So many of you have seen the interviews I've done with Dr. Leonard Jeffries throughout the years also. Okay, so if we look at this here, and a lot of people ask, who is Imhotep? And we see that even with Imhotep, the name is distorted and the depictions are oftentimes distorted of Imhotep as well. But Imhotep was one of the greatest people who ever lived in human history. And he was known as the world's first multi-genius. He was a mathematician. He was a designer for the designer of the step pyramid for Nesubiti-Zoser in the Third Dynasty. And he was a high priest, a physician, architect. And now the word Imhotep means he who comes in peace, he who comes in peace. in the ancient Medu language. Depending upon which timeline of history you're looking at, you may see that you can see him living somewhere between 2780 BC to 3000 BC, depending upon which timeline of history you look at. Because we know at least 130,000 years of our history has been stolen, I go with the oldest dates, I can find. So you'll see him living circa around 3000 BC. Okay. Now, this is a good book here from Dr. Malefi Kete Asante, The Egyptian Philosophers, Ancient African Voices from Imhotep to Akhenaten. And this deals with a lot of ancient African philosophers before Socrates and Plato and Aristotle and things like this. Before them, there's a lot of ancient African philosophers, Kunanup, Ptahhotep, Kagimni, Sanchi, Imhotep, Akhenaten. He deals with this in that book. Okay, so now these are two well-known statues, little small statues of Imhotep also. All right. So this is Imhotep and this is not Imhotep. So in the 2001 movie, The Mummy Returns, the villain's name, one of the villain's names was Imhotep. And he was a high priest from ancient Egypt. Okay. And he's depicted by this, by the actor Arnold Vosloo. And he looks Arab, Eurasian, what have you. And in the movie, he was evil. He was a villain. So consequently, many of our children will see this and think that one of our greatest ancestors and one of the greatest people ever lived in human history, they'll think he was not African. Okay, so we have to be very cognizant of the type of images that we allow our children to consume as well, because this is all programming. Okay, whatever is disseminated becomes imitated. Whatever is disseminated becomes imitated. And your thoughts create feelings. Your feelings create actions and behaviors. Your actions and behaviors create results. All right, now this is a picture of the step pyramid at Saqqara that Imhotep was an architect of. This is an early form of pyramid building called a mastaba, which means flat bench, B-E-N-C-H, flat bench, which is different than the pyramids that we see at Giza, pyramids of Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure, but there are also smaller pyramids of African queens there at Giza as well that don't really get talked about a lot also. All right. And then we also see pyramid building in the Sudan or in Nubia, Ta-Nehesi, and there are twice as many pyramids in the Sudan as there are somewhere. There's a little more than 200 in the Sudan. There's twice as many in the Sudan as there are in Egypt, because we know that Nubia or Ta-Nehesi was the mother of ancient Kemet, and Abyssinia, Ethiopia, is the grandmother of ancient Kemet as well. So these are all things that we deal with in the online class. How's everybody doing? Hopefully you can hear me okay as well. Share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in. And you can register for this 10-week online course. I just posted a link here, and you can register at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. It's on sale, $80, regularly $130. Once you register for it, you have full access to it even after the 10-week online class is over with. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. So I teach this on Saturdays, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can register there. As soon as you register, you can watch last week's class. We have bonus content for you as well. On Sundays, I teach from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. Which, at the same time, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. And we have a bundle pack where you can register for both classes for only $120. They're regularly $130 each, so that's a $260 value for $120. We have bonus content you can watch on demand, and if you've taken any of my classes with me before, you'll get 50% off this bundle pack here. So email us at ahnshow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and you'll get 50% off also. All right. And let me continue here. Let me put the email address up. Email us at ahnshow@africanhistorynetwork.com and you'll get 50% off. So when we look at the Asar, Aset, and Heru, who the Greeks called Osiris, Isis, and Horus, the also known as the First Holy Trinity. And there's numerous sources on this. Tony Browder talks about this in Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization. We look at Christianity Before Christ by Dr. John G. Jackson. We look at the World's 16 Crucified Saviors by Kersey Graves. But Asar, Aset, and Heru, who the Greeks called Osiris, Isis, and Horus. And we're going to see that the Black Madonnan child was worshipped in Europe even before the Moors go in. And we're going to see there's still statues there all throughout Europe, Spain, and Portugal, and France of the Black Madonnan child. But that comes from Aset and Heru. Aset was known as the first queen of Kemet. Kemet, one of the original names of Egypt, meaning land of the blacks. She was the wife of Asar, Osiris. Mother of Heru. Heru was also known as the first Ka Rest. Ka meaning spirit, rest, R-S-T meaning to rise, R-I-S-E, or Christ, because the title Christ, which is a title, not a name, the title Christ comes from the Greek Christos, which comes from the Kemetic Ka Rest. As you go through this history, and these are some of the things we deal with in the class, as we go through and look at this history, we see how these different civilizations were influenced by Africa, in ancient Africa, in the Nile Valley region of Africa. And Aset resurrects Asar after he's killed by his brother Set. Okay, in the mythology, his body's cut up into 14 pieces, and 13 of those pieces are recovered. The 14th piece is not recovered. It's the phallus. And she's going to erect a tekken, which the Greeks called an obelisk. And a tekken is a symbol of transformation and resurrection. She erects that as a symbol of Asar, the resurrection of Asar, but also that last piece that was not recovered. And we see the tekken, we see that in Freemasonry, and we see that's also the Washington Monument. Now, here's another depiction of Aset with the throne on her head, and her name Aset means she of throne, because whoever sits on the throne in ancient Kemet as Nesubiti, or Pharaoh, or king, that's determined through the woman's side of the family, is matrilineal. So it's determined through who coming through the woman's side of the family, coming through the womb of the woman, she of throne. So Aset is associated with love and fertility, and we're going to see that the different deities, or the Neteru, okay, Neter for singular, Neteru for plural, these different forces of nature, these different manifestations of the one supreme force, one supreme being, we're going to see that they have different attributes. But also when we look at Venus and Aphrodite, and when we look at these different deities and amongst the Greeks and the Romans, etc., we're going to see they have different attributes as well. And we're going to see that many of them are going to be variations of the deities coming from ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt. So from Aset and Heru being born on December 25th, by virgin birth to Aset. And we see this in the mythology as well. From Aset and Heru, we get the Black Madonnan child and the worship of the Black Madonnan child that we see worshiped throughout Europe. And then from that, we get the decolorized version. We get the Virgin Mary and the baby Jesus. And we know that at the time that the Bible was written, at the time all this was supposed to take place, the letter J didn't exist, because the letter J is derived from the letter I, and the letter J wasn't created till 1630 AD. So when you look up the letter J in the dictionary, well, you look up the word Jesus in the dictionary, it takes you back to the Hebrew Yeshua with a Y, because the letter J didn't exist. Okay. So one of the things that we do, we go through and we look at different languages. And as you go through and one, study the etymology of words, two, you start looking at different languages, you can start seeing how you start seeing the impact of historical events, and you start seeing as different ethnic groups and different groups of people interchange cultures. You're going to see an interchange of ideas, mythology, stories, language, customs, celebrations, all different types of things like this. And as you have a rise in the European phenotype coming out of the Dark Ages, going into the Renaissance era of the early 1500s, as you have a rise in the European, as you have a rise in the dominance of European powers, and they start to conquer people's land, enslave people, set up colonies, and set up sugarcane plantations and all different types of things like this, and extract the mineral wealth out of people's land and use this to rebuild their own European nations that have been devastated by civil war and devastated by plagues and disease, things like this. Because, for instance, the bubonic plague, the Black Death, hits in spurts from 1347 to 1400. Europe is going to lose somewhere between a third to a quarter of their population. Estimates are somewhere between 25 to 75 million people are going to die in Europe between about 1347 and 1400. Okay, so when you go through, and one of the things we do, we look at the film, we look at the film Black Panther, and see how the film Black Panther had African culture infused into the film. Okay, but there's an article from history.com, the official website of the History Channel, which shows a comparison between West African nations that were thriving in the 14th century, while Europe is devastated by civil war and disease. Okay. All right. So how's everybody doing? Share this broadcasting on social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in. I'm Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. So I'm doing a brief overview of this 10-week online class that I teach. It teaches on Saturdays, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. You can register for this at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and the link is also here in the thread of this broadcast. Next class is Saturday, February 12th. We do this on Saturdays, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This class just started up. And as soon as you register, you can watch last week's class. So we do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime, even a year from now. If you want to go back and watch the entire class, you can do that. Okay. So you'll still have access to it. The class is regularly $130. It's on sale $80. And you can use this with your children also. I would say the content is PG-13. All right. So I don't do a lot of cursing. It's not crazy. I don't call people racial epithets and things like this. All right. So I'm going to post a link here, and you can also register for the bundle pack, because you can register for both classes that I teach for only $120. And that's they're regularly $130 each. Okay. All right. Let's continue here. We'll post a link here as well. All right. So some other things that I deal with in the class, and we go through and look at thousands of years of history. And we also deal with the African presence in the Americas going back at least 56,000 years ago. We look at what was the transatlantic slave trade. What were some of the events that led up to the transatlantic slave trade starting? And we go through and look at history chronologically. And we look at a timeline of history to really understand cause and effect, to really understand how different events lead up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. What role did Christopher Columbus play? Even though Columbus did not create the transatlantic slave trade, it goes back to 1441 with the Portuguese. But we look at things that lead up to that taking place. We know that Columbus was central to the spread of the transatlantic slave trade. He's conquering on behalf of Spain, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. Okay. And we know that Columbus, and we look at Columbus and his 4 voyages from 1492 to about 1504. We know he dies in 1506. But Columbus never came to the land that we call the United States of America. The closest he came here was Cuba, which is 90 miles away. But the Columbus conquering places like Hispaniola and the western third of the island of Hispaniola is where Haiti is, or Haiti, what the Taino called Haiti. Okay. Cuba was conquered by Columbus. Puerto Rico was conquered by Columbus. So these island nations that Columbus conquers over 500 years ago are still dealing with the impact and still dealing with the side effects of being conquered by the Spanish. They still have not recovered over 500 years later. When did Africans first come to the U.S. as slaves? As enslaved Africans, as some people want to refer to them as. Because even though 1619 did happen, the Spanish were taking Africans into the territory we call South Carolina in 1526. This is 93 years before 1619. Okay. And oftentimes that just gets overlooked. But Africans were here for tens of thousands of years before that even happened. We deal with, did Africans set themselves into slavery and that complicated history? Were African people in America before the transatlantic slave trade? Absolutely. This was our land stolen from us. And one of the books that I reference in the class, and you don't have to buy any of these books, is The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence by Dr. David Imhotep, who's a friend of mine. I've interviewed him a number of times. So many of you have seen the interviews I've done with Dr. David Imhotep. We'll talk about his work in just a minute. Because African people were in this land that we call the United States of America going back at least 51,700 years ago. At least 51,700 years ago. These were the Khoisan, who have the oldest DNA on the planet. They go all around the world. They're the short-statured Africans. They're the ancestors to the Ainu and the Twa, and they were here in this land. And there was a discovery in 2004 in Allendale County, South Carolina, by Dr. Albert Goodyear that verifies this. Now, this doesn't mean the transatlantic slave trade didn't happen. What this means is that we were in this land for tens of thousands of years before the transatlantic slave trade happened. We had already circumnavigated the globe. And this oftentimes gets left out of history. So largely we're taught, and especially during African American History Month or Black History Month, largely we're taught about history from 1619, and we're taught about slavery and things like this during Black History Month. But when we study Dr. Carter G. Woodson and the founding of the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, September 9th, 1915, and Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who's the father of Black History Month, and it started the second week in February 7th, 1926. There's been an annual theme for African American History Month, Black History Month, since 1928. And many of those things dealt with Africa, the continent of Africa, and African history. It was never, one, designed to be the only time of the year we study our history. Two, it was not just supposed to look at our history here, but throughout the diaspora, and also understand the history of African people in Africa as well, and the connection, okay? Because these are things that Dr. Carter G. Woodson was doing and teaching about. So this page here, page 95 of Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization by Tony Browder. How's everybody doing? Share this broadcast on your social media platforms. How you like this type of information? If you still need to register for this online class, let me know. We teach this on Saturdays. So next class is coming up. Next class is Saturday, February 12th, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If we look at page 95 of Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization by Tony Browder, he talks about the 1984 Nile Valley Conference in Atlanta, Georgia. And he says in 1984, at the Nile Valley Conference in Atlanta, Georgia, Dr. Charles Cofer, professor of Old Testament at the Interdenominational Theological Center in Atlanta, discussed the role of Egypt and Ethiopia in the Old Testament. He stated the following: in the King James and Revised Standard versions of the Bible, the word Egypt, or Mitzrayim in Hebrew, along with cognates, occurs some 740 times in the Old Testament. The word translated Ethiopia and or Cush, and Cush in Hebrew, along with cognates and including 3 instances of duplication in the references, appears 58 times in the King James Version. In this version, the translation Ethiopia is used 39 times. Cush, untranslated with cognates, 19 times. The numerous references to Egypt led one Old Testament scholar to remark, quote, no other land is mentioned so frequently as Egypt in the Old Testament, end quote. To understand Israel, one must look well into Egypt. To understand Israel, one must look well into Egypt. So Browder goes on to talk about the story of Asar, Aset, and Heru, who the Greeks called Osiris, Isis, and Horus. And he says Asar, Aset, and Heru is the first story in the recorded history of man of a holy royal family, the Trinity, Immaculate Conception, virgin birth, and resurrection. Evidence of this Trinity is known to have existed in ancient Nubia, Ta-Nehesi, Nubia, as late as 3300 BCE. So 3000 BCE, before the Common Era, before Christ. Evidence of this first Holy Trinity is known to have existed in Nubia as late as 3300 BCE. Carved on the walls of the Temple of Luxor, circa 1380 BCE, around 1380 BC, are scenes that depict the following. Now, this may go outside the circumference of some people's awareness. And once again, this is just a brief overview of the type of information that I cover in this 10-week online class. The Annunciation, the Immaculate Conception, the Virgin Birth, and the Adoration. Because we're dealing with stories that are told over and over again, adapted to various people's cultures around the world. And their ethnicity is put on these stories, their names are put on them, etc. If you read Christianity Before Christ by Dr. John G. Jackson, he really does a good job of breaking this down. Browder deals with this in Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization. He deals with this some, but if you read Christianity Before Christ by Dr. John G. Jackson, there are other books, and other books I have here as well. Now, you don't have to buy any of these books to be able to follow along in class. Okay, I use them for reference. You can buy them if you want to, but you don't have to feel obligated to buy. It's not like a college class where you have to buy textbooks or you're going to fail the class, because you don't have to worry about any of that. If you go back to this here. So number one, the Annunciation. Okay, if we look at the panels below, the drawings below, we see number one over to my left, the Annunciation, the Neter Dehuti, who the Greeks called Thoth, is shown announcing to the Virgin Aset the coming birth of their son Heru. Number two, the Immaculate Conception. The Neter Neph, Kneph, who represents the Holy Ghost, and the Neter Het Heru, who the Greeks called Hathor, are symbolically impregnating Aset by holding Ankhs, the symbol of life, or you refer to it as the African key of life, or the African symbol for eternal life, the Ankh, Ankh. They are symbolically impregnating Aset, the virgin, by holding Ankhs to the nostrils of the virgin mother to be. Then in panel 3, the virgin birth, Aset is shown sitting on the birthing stool, and the newborn child is attended by midwives. Number 4, the adoration. The adoration, the newborn Heru is portrayed receiving gifts from the 3 kings or magi while being adored by a host of gods and men. Now, in the Bible, when they talk about the wise men, it doesn't say how many. Okay, 3 wise men or 3 kings is associated with the 3 stars in Orion's belt. Orion the hunter, the constellation of Orion the hunter. We know that Orion is followed by 2 dogs in the constellation, Canis Major and Canis Minor, the big dog and the small dog. In Canis Major, you have the star Sirius, which is the brightest star in the sky, the star Sirius. And Sirius is also referred to as the dog star. Okay. In ancient times, the constellation of Orion was the constellation of Asar, who the Greeks called Osiris. Now, when you look at the Virgin Mary and you look at the constellation of Virgo, okay, the constellation, and you have the astrological sign of Virgo. Virgo is Latin, which means virgin. Virgo in Latin means virgin. The constellation of Virgo in ancient times was the constellation of Aset, the virgin, who the Greeks called Isis. Okay, so as we go through this history, we see how these stories get retold over and over again, adapted to various people's cultures. Okay, and then they get represented to us by Europeans like they created it themselves, and they did not. This is an example of that representing as if they created it themselves, and you may call it cultural appropriation or something like that. The TV show for the 1970s, Saturday morning TV show, The Secrets of Isis. And they had this on Hulu a few years ago. It may still be there. I'm not sure, because I went and watched some episodes. So this was a TV show that came on in the 1970s, Saturday morning. They had the Shazam and Isis Hour. And I still have comic books from the 1970s that, because in the comic books, they would advertise the Saturday morning TV shows and the Saturday morning cartoons. This is before there was a comedy. This was before there was a Cartoon Network, all that stuff. We ain't had cable. Okay. So Saturday morning, all the new, this was when all the new cartoons came out, the Super Friends and all the new TV shows. Okay. For children, Saturday morning. They had NBC. You'll see they run the 1 or 2. They'll show the 2-minute little commercial. Schoolhouse Rock. Okay, I'm a Bill on Capitol Hill. Lolly, get your adverbs here. All that stuff. Okay, that was Saturday morning. This TV show, The Secrets of Isis, had this white woman she was a school teacher by day. She was a superhero. She got her powers from ancient Egypt. So when the TV show comes on, and they start talking about these names of different Neteru, and they tell you that she gets her powers from ancient Egypt. Now, they didn't say the ancient Egyptians were Africans. They ain't mentioned none of that. And they show her flying through the sky, saving the world. And they have symbols from ancient Kemet, the sun disk and the horns of Het Heru, all this stuff, the wings of Ma'at, everything, or the wings of Ra. They have all this in the TV show, and they show this white woman, and they call her Isis. And I remember watching this in the 70s, and we didn't know that this was a copy straight out of our history and culture. This is the picture from the box, the DVD box set of The Secrets of Isis. Okay. But this is an example. So we deal with the different Neteru, and this is only part of the class. We go through this history chronologically as much as possible, and we look at different African civilizations. So Ma'at was the female winged deity. She was a Neter, winged deity. She was the personification of truth, justice, righteousness, balance, harmony, order, and reciprocity. And the 42 laws of Ma'at are a precursor to the 10 Commandments as well. And when you die, your heart symbolically was weighed in the mythology. Your heart was weighed on the scale of Ma'at as well. This is depicted in the judgment scene, a famous scene called the judgment scene. Okay, in ancient Kemet also. Now this is my friend Dr. David Imhotep, who wrote the book "The First Americans Were Africans: Documented Evidence," and we reference his book in the class also. Once again, you don't have to buy any of these books. This book came out in 2011, and his book is backed up by 713 footnotes and 7 peer-reviewed articles. And his book deals with the African presence in the Americas dating back tens of thousands of years ago. At the time his book came out, at least 56,000 years ago in South America, and at least 51,700 years ago in the land that we call the United States of America. On page 14 of his book, he lays this out, and let me see. I got his book right here. So this is my copy of his first book. He has another book out that just came out in the last few months. The First Americans Were Africans, revised and expanded. The First Americans Were Africans, revised and expanded. And I interviewed him October 12th, 2021 about his new book. Okay. And he has a lot more information in there. I think he has something like 200 additional pages. I have to get a copy of that one. All right. So in 2004, there was a discovery made in Allendale County, South Carolina, by Dr. Albert Goodyear. Dr. Albert Goodyear is an archaeologist from the University of South Carolina. And some of the articles that I reference in the class dealing with archaeological discoveries, we'll see Dr. Albert Goodyear quoted in them, because we look at a number of different archaeological discoveries that have happened in the past few years that are causing scientists and archaeologists and paleontologists to rethink everything. 1, 2, to realize all of this is much older than they originally thought, and it's causing them to push the timelines back as well. But in Allendale County, South Carolina, in 2004, Dr. Albert Goodyear made this discovery, this archaeological discovery. They found 13 different types of evidence thoroughly documenting an African presence in the territory we call South Carolina, dating back at least 51,700 years ago. They found artifacts, architecture, campsites, carvings, Egyptian writings, footprints in lava, genetic M174D haploid groups dealing with DNA and genetics, linguistics, paintings, skulls, skeletons, structures, and tools. They found 13 different types of evidence thoroughly documenting this African presence. Okay. Now, this is before Native Americans even come into existence. This is why when we deal with our history, especially during Black History Month, African American History Month, as it's called now, then the governing body for African American History Month or Black History Month is ASALH, Association for the Study of African American Life and History, which is the organization that Dr. Carter G. Woodson co-founded September 9th, 1915 in Chicago. This is why when we deal with this history, especially during the month of February, we need to deal with this history chronologically. We can't start talking about our history in 1619 or 1526 or in 1776 or what have you. We need to deal with this history leading up to that. Because the worst thing we can do is think that we first came to this land conquered and shackled and chained, conquered by Europeans, because that's not the case. We were here before they even came into existence. We were here before they even came into, we were here in this land. I'm not talking about on this planet. We were here in this land that we call the United States. This was our land stolen from us. Yes, Native Americans were done wrong. And when you study Native Americans, the people who we call Native Americans are the offspring of the intermixing of Africans who were already here for tens of thousands of years and Asians who come here to this land about 3000 BC. They intermix in their offspring, or who we've been taught to call Native Americans. Because when you look at a lot of old black and white photographs of Native Americans, these were usually a dark-skinned people. They had dark skin, high cheekbones. Okay, these were usually a dark-skinned people. And then you're going to have also groups of Africans who are already here who get reclassified by Europeans. They get reclassified as Native Americans. Okay, but these were African people also. Now, this is not to say that Native Americans were not treated unfairly by Europeans and European settlers and the U.S. government, things like this. I'm not saying that. But to understand the existence of something, you must first understand the pre-existence of existence, as one of my teachers, Professor Kaba Hiawatha Kamene talks about. And actually, this book, this one right here, Chronology of Native Americans, the ultimate guide to North America's indigenous people. When you go look at old black and white photographs of Native Americans, these were usually a dark-skinned people. Once again, these weren't the very, very light-skinned, almost white-looking Native Americans that you will see represented, some of them represented today. That's not, when you go look at old photographs of them. No, that's not how they look. All right. Let's continue. How's everybody doing? All right. Now, this is Dr. Albert Goodyear, archaeologist from the University of South Carolina. Here's a picture of him. He's a white archaeologist. This is an article from ScienceDaily.com from 2004, November 18th, 2004, 18 years ago. New evidence puts man in North America 50,000 years ago. New evidence puts man in North America 50,000 years ago. Now, this is a summary. This is about his discovery. This is a summary of the article. Now, this is not my summary. This is a summary from ScienceDaily.com, which is a scientific website. They have all types of different scientific breakthroughs and archaeological discoveries, things like this at ScienceDaily.com. Radiocarbon tests of carbonized plant remains. Radiocarbon tests of carbonized plant remains where artifacts were unearthed last May. It would be May of May of 2004. Unearthed last May along the Savannah River in Allendale County by University of South Carolina archaeologist Dr. Albert Goodyear indicate that the sediments containing these artifacts are at least 50,000 years old, meaning that humans inhabited North America long before the last ice age. Humans inhabited North America long before the last ice age. So who are these humans? These were the Khoisan. An October 2012 genetic study published in Science magazine found that the Khoisan in southern Africa, also referred to as Bushmen, the Khoisan in southern Africa are the oldest ethnic group of modern humans, with their ancestral line originating about 100,000 years ago. The Khoisan, formerly called by the derogatory term Bushmen, are genetically unique, and no other currently known population had separated so early from our common modern human ancestor, according to the report. And there's a lot of information out there on the Khoisan that you can research. So we look at different archaeological discoveries, and I like to look at this early in the course to help lay a foundation to expand people's minds, because people come to the class with different levels of understanding of history. And a lot of these archaeological discoveries that I talk about, people are not really familiar with them. And these are just a few here. There's a lot more. I have over 200 slides for the course. This discovery came out in February of 2010. This is an article from the New York Times. On Crete, new evidence of very ancient mariners. On Crete, new evidence of very ancient mariners. This is one of the reasons why I say at least 130,000 years of our history has been stolen. And our scholars like Dr. Charles Finch and Runoko Rashidi, we know Runoko passed away August 2nd, 2021. They've been saying for years that Homo sapiens are at least 300,000 years old. Modern man is at least 300,000 years old, not 75,000 to 100,000 years old. But this discovery here found that stone tools found on the Greek island of Crete over the course of 2 summers, archaeologists say are at least 130,000 years old. Archaeologists say these stone tools that were found are at least 130,000 years old, which is considered strong evidence for the earliest known seafaring in the Mediterranean, and calls for rethinking the maritime capabilities of pre-human cultures. So now this discovery came out 12 years ago. How many people have never heard of this before? This was a archaeological excavation over the course of 2 summers. Now, what makes it so interesting is that the Greek island of Crete has been an island for more than 5 million years, meaning that the tool makers must have arrived by boat. So this seems to push the history of Mediterranean voyaging back more than 100,000 years, specialists in Stone Age archaeology say. Previous artifact discoveries has shown people reaching Cyprus and a few other Greek islands, and possibly Sardinia, no earlier than 10,000 to 12,000 years ago. Well, this discovery blows this out the water, and it's causing the scientists to have to rethink everything. They keep, having to push the timelines back. Remember Juvenile had the song back in like 1988, 1999, back that thing up. They keep having to back the timelines up when these archaeological discoveries are coming out like every week, every other week. There was one that I just saw that dealt with, and one of the things that's interesting is when these discoveries take place, right? All the news outlets have articles on them. New York Times, Washington Post, NBC, LA Times, USA Today, CBS, Associated Press, National Geographic, the Journal of Nature, all of them. Okay. Smithsonian, the SmithsonianMag.com, they all have stories on this when these archaeological discoveries take place. Now, you may not see a whole lot of it maybe on TV, like on cable news and things like this. They may show 20, 30 seconds on it. There was an article from NBC News that I just saw in the past couple of days dealing with another discovery that just came out. And this dealt with the earliest known human presence. I think it was in Europe. Okay, let's go to this one quickly here. All right, how's everybody doing? Okay, who still needs to register for this 10-week online class that I teach? Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa. Understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. So we deal with thousands of years of history, and we deal with what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. I teach this class on Saturdays, 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The class just started up. And we do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch them anytime. As soon as you register, you can watch the class that I did last weekend. And we go through and we look at history chronologically. I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips, etc. The class is on sale $80, regularly $130. Once you register for it, you have full access to the class even after the class is over with. So a year from now, if you want to go back and watch the entire course, you'll still have access to it. You can also register for both classes that I teach, because on Sundays I teach from the Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. And that's 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time also. So we bundle pack when you can register for both classes for only $120. They're regularly $130 each. Okay, so that's $120 value. And we'll post a link here for the course bundle also. But we have it at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can register there. Okay. If you've taken any of these classes with me before, any of my online classes, email me at ahnshow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You'll get a 50% discount on the new classes. Okay. All right. So I want to look here at this. So this article here deals with a discovery that just came out. And this piece is from February 9th, 2022. And once again, these discoveries are coming out every week or every other week. Earliest evidence of modern humans in Europe discovered in France. Earliest evidence of modern humans in Europe discovered in France. The findings at Grotte Mandrin, a cave in the Rhone Valley, about 80 miles north of Marseille, provide fresh evidence that modern humans lived alongside Neanderthals. This is a flint point thought to be the tip of an arrowhead found during the excavation. The earliest evidence of modern humans in Europe has been unearthed in a cave in southern France, showing they lived there at the same time as Neanderthals, something long suspected but never established before now. The findings at Grotte Mandrin, a cave in the Rhone Valley about 80 miles north of, focus on a single Homo sapiens tooth and on distinctive fragments of flint points that are thought to be for the arrows and darts used for hunting by early modern humans. The discoveries push back the earliest date of our species, Homo sapiens, in Europe, roughly 10,000 years to about 54,000 years ago, according to a study on the findings published Wednesday in the journal Science Advances. The study also suggests the modern human group was part of an incursion from the Eastern Mediterranean coast that did not last long before they again vanished from Europe. One of the early waves of Homo sapiens migrating to the continent. They may have numbered a few hundred, including women and children. Okay, so read the rest of this article here. This is from February 9th, 2022. Earliest evidence of modern humans in Europe discovered in Africa. Okay, this is from NBCnews.com. All right, so let's continue here. Okay, so we have this on Crete, new evidence of very ancient mariners. We look at other archaeological discoveries like the sunken Egyptian city, Tanis Heraklion, that was swallowed into the sea about 1,200. It was about 1,200 years ago. I think it's about 1,200 years ago, swallowed into the sea. 1,200 sunken Egyptian city reveals 1,200-year-old city. It's lost for about 1,200 years. The UK publication, the Telegraph, reports that 150 feet beneath the surface of Egypt's Bay of Abu Qir, they found 64 ships, 16-foot tall statues, 700 anchors, countless gold coins, and smaller artifacts. Now, this was a discovery that was revealed in April of 2013. The archaeologist who led the expedition, archaeologist Frank Gaudillo, estimates Tanis Heraklion was built around 8th century BC, Now, here is an example of some of the things that were found. These statues that found at the bottom of the sea. That's the legs of a statue broken off. Okay. Now, some other things that we look at in the class, besides numerous archaeological discoveries, to get a better understanding of history and how it helps to really expand our minds also, these archaeological discoveries. We deal with the problem with slave movies. Why are we being bombarded with slave movies and slave-themed TV shows, even though the history of slavery is important, but movies dealing with African civilizations and us ruling nations and things like this, that gets left out. We don't see those depictions largely. This is one of the reasons why the film Black Panther did so well, because it wasn't another slave movie, and it showed African people ruling an African nation, even though it's fictitious, the African nation of Wakanda. We deal with Asar Seton-Heru, and the origins of the Immaculate Conception story, as I talked about, the links between ancient Kemet, Egypt, and early Christianity. And early Christianity looked a lot like traditional African spiritual systems also. A lot of early Christians believed in a form of reincarnation. This is before the First Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, before the various ecumenical councils between 325 and about 1870 or so, that change what people believe, how they practice Christianity, things like this. We look at Freemasonry in America, the fake Willie Lynch letter 1712, the African influence in the film Black Panther, and a lot more. Now, when we look at Freemasonry and its foundation coming from the teachings from ancient Kemet and the Nile Valley region of Africa, we see, as I was saying a few minutes ago, the Washington Monument is a Tekken. That's an African symbol. And it comes from Freemasonry. It comes from ancient Kemet, the Tekken. There are about 1,200 Tekkenu all throughout ancient Kemet. Today, there's, by some estimates, less than 12. But we see that that's a symbol from Freemasonry also, the Tekken, and the Greeks called it an obelisk. Okay, we see the Washington, we see the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. monument in Washington, D.C., and we see the Tekken in the distance. Now, the word Mason is derived from the Latin words mass and sun. Mason means child of light and expresses the desire to pursue light, which is a metaphor for the sun, which symbolizes knowledge. So when you watch cartoons, oftentimes you'll see the cartoon character has an idea. So you'll see a light bulb go off over the cartoon character's head. You'll see light associated with knowledge. But then also, even if you look at, that's a bright idea, referring to good, referring to something positive, and knowledge, bright, B-R-I-G-H-T, in reference to light. The term child of light, or sons and daughters of light, was used to identify students who had completed 42 years of study in the temples of ancient Kemet. Many Masonic temples were modeled after the temples of Kemet, places where light or knowledge was imparted in a series of steps or degrees. So the concept of liberal arts colleges comes from ancient Kemet, and George G.M. James breaks this down in the book Stolen Legacy. Okay, Greek philosophy is stolen Egyptian philosophy by George G.M. James, and he talks about the 7 liberal arts and the trivium and the quadrivium and the rhetoric and the arithmetic and logic and things like this, and the 7 liberal arts that were taught in the temples in ancient Kemet. Okay, so the concept of going to an institution of higher learning and getting your credentials in a series of steps or degrees comes out of ancient Africa. This is what we were doing. Now, 50 of the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence and 13 of the 39 signers of the U.S. Constitution were Freemasons. Okay, check out page 18 of Egypt on the Potomac by Tony Browder. We look at things like the Black Death, the bubonic plague that hits in spurts from 1347 to 1400. One of the worst plagues in history arrived at Europe's shores in 1347. 5 years later, some 25 to 50 million people were dead. Nearly 700 years after the Black Death swept through Europe, it still haunts the world as the worst case scenario for an epidemic called the Great Mortality, as it caused its devastation. This second great pandemic of bubonic plague became known as the Black Death in the late 17th century. Read this article here, The Black Death, from history.com, which is the official website of the History Channel. When we look at Mansa Musa, who became emperor of the Mali Empire in 1312 AD, and we look at Ghana, Songhai, and Mali, those 3 great West African empires. We deal with that in the class also. This article here from history.com talks about a comparison between Mansa Musa and T'Challa in the film Black Panther. Okay. In the vast fictional universe of Marvel Comics, T'Challa, better known as Black Panther, is not only king of Wakanda, and Wakanda is a real word. Also, it's an ancient word. He's also the richest superhero of them all. And although today's fight for the title of wealthiest person alive involves a tug of war between billionaire CEOs, the wealthiest person in history, Mansa Musa, has more in common with Marvel's first black superhero. Mansa Musa became emperor or ruler of the Mali Empire in 1312 AD, taking the throne from his predecessor, Abubakar II, for whom he had served as deputy. And Abubakar II went missing on a voyage he took by sea to find the edge of the Atlantic Ocean. Mansa Musa's rule came at a time when European nations were struggling due to raging civil wars and a lack of resources. During that period, the Mali Empire flourished thanks to ample natural resources like gold and salt. So they're telling you that Mali was flourishing when Europe was in disarray and ravaged by civil war and poverty and lack of resources, things like this. Read this article here. This 14th century African emperor remains the richest person in history. This is from March 19th, 2018. March 19th, 2018 from history.com. And that was a month after the film Black Panther came out. But when we look at Black Panther, the Panther deity Bast, okay, comes from Bastet, out of ancient Kemet, Bastet. And Bastet was a Kemetic deity or Egyptian goddess worshipped in the form of a lioness and later a cat. She was a goddess of warfare in Lower Kemet and worshipped as early as the Second Dynasty, around 2890 BCE, before the Common Era. We talk about Bantu and different African cultures, different African ethnic groups, language groups. But what is Bantu? Bantu languages are a group of some 500 languages belonging to the Bantoid subgroup of the Benue Congo branch of the Niger Congo language family. The Bantu languages are spoken in a very large area, including most of Africa, from southern Cameroon eastward to Kenya and southward to the southernmost tip of the continent of Africa. 12 Bantu languages are spoken by more than 5 million people, including Rundi, Rwanda, Shona, Isikosa, you may see it expressed as Kosa, but Isikosa, and Zulu. Now, Swahili or Kiswahili, Kiswahili, which is spoken by 5 million people as a mother tongue and some 30 million as a second language, is a Bantu lingua franca, important in both commerce and literature. Now, the language Kosa or Isikosa, that is the language spoken in the film Black Panther. The language that's speaking in the film Black Panther is a real African language, and it's a Bantu language. And Kiswahili is a Bantu language as well. So we talk about Kujichagulia, and we talk about Umoja and Ujamaa, things like this. Those are Bantu words, because Kiswahili is a Bantu language as well. What is Wakanda? So what we see the word Wakanda in the Omaha Ponca Native American language, the Sioux Indian language. It means possesses secret powers. Possesses secret powers. It's also a Bantu word as well. Wakanda is a very ancient word. We look at different civilizations like Carthage and Hannibal Barca and the Battle of Cannae, 216 BC, things like this. The Kingdom of Great Zimbabwe, Namibia, Axum. Okay, so we look at different African civilizations as well to get a better understanding of this history and look at a chronology of history. And we definitely look at some of the history of the Africans known as the Moors, who go into the Iberian Peninsula 711 AD, and they're going to defeat the Vandals and the Visigoths, and they settle in the southern portion there of the Iberian Peninsula, today known as Spain and Portugal, and they call the area that they settle in Al-Andalus, which basically means to walk in a spiritual light or walk in a spiritual path. Al-Andalus. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, the Moors, as early as the Middle Ages and as late as the 17th century, were, quote, commonly supposed to be black or very swarthy, and hence the word is often used for negro, end quote. Early in the 8th century, after a grim and extended resistance to the Arab invasions of North Africa, the Moors joined the triumphant surge of Islam. Following this, they crossed over from Morocco over to the Iberian Peninsula, today known as Spain and Portugal, and Spain and Portugal is right above Morocco, where the Moors are going in. Iberian Peninsula, where their swift victories and remarkable feats soon became the substance of legends. So once again, just keep in mind, this is just a brief overview of some of the things that we cover in this 10-week online class. Okay, I'm just skimming the surface here. So you can register for this online class, and I'll post a link again at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And we'll post a link here again also. And the name of this class is, I'm doing a preview right now. The name of this class is Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. So in July 710 AD, Common Era, with 400 foot soldiers and 100 horses, all Berbers, Tarif successfully carried out a mission in southern Iberia. Tarif, an important port city in southern Spain, is named after him. And it is clear, however, that the conquest of Spain, so there was a reconnaissance mission in 710 AD to get the lay of the land and see what they were up against. And then they actually really invade in 711 AD, led by Tariq ibn Ziyad. It is clear, however, that the conquest of Spain was undertaken upon the initiative of Tariq ibn Ziyad. Tariq was in command of an army of at least 10,000 men. Here's a depiction of Tariq. In 711 Common Era, the bold Tariq crossed the straits and disembarked near a rock promontory, which from that day since has borne his name, Jebel Tariq, which means Tariq's mountain. We know it as Gibraltar, also referred to as the Rock of Gibraltar. Gibraltar, that mountain Gibraltar, is named after an African man, Tariq ibn Ziyad. In August 711 Common Era AD, Tariq won paramount victory over the opposing European army. On the eve of the battle, Tariq is alleged to have aroused his troops with the following words: "My brethren, the enemy is before you, the sea is behind. Whither would ye fly? Follow your general. I am resolved either to lose my life or to trample on the prostrate king of the Romans." End quote. Wasting no time to relish his victory, Tariq pushed on with his dashing and seemingly tireless Moorish cavalry to the Spanish city of Toledo. Within a month's time, General Tariq ibn Ziyad had effectively terminated European dominance of the Iberian Peninsula. This is an excerpt of a fantastic article that Runoko Rashidi wrote for AtlantaBlackStar.com from June 1st, June 1st, 2014. And I interviewed Renoko about his book, Black Presence, the African, Black Star, the African Presence in Early Europe. And we talked about this article also. Moors, Saints, Knights, and Kings, the African Presence in Medieval and Renaissance Europe. And that book is one of the books that we use in the class as well. Okay. These are two books that I referenced. Now, this is by Renoko Rashidi. Black Star, the African Presence in Early Europe by Renoko Rashidi. Fantastic, fantastic book. Has a lot of pictures of him in Europe showing things like the Black Madonna and Child, things like this. This is page 90, showing statues of the Black Madonna and Child that he took. He took these pictures in Switzerland, Poland, Spain, Madrid, Spain, Luxembourg City, Luxembourg. And then also this book here, Golden Age of the Moor, edited by Dr. Ivan van Sertima, but Renoko Rashidi has a essay in here, and Dr. Jose Pimenta Bay and Jan Carew and Dr. Wayne Chandler, they all have essays in this book. This is one of the best books, dealing with the history of the Moors, Golden Age of the Moor. Okay, so we talk about the Black Death, who bound the plague. We talk about Christopher Columbus, and also one of the other books that we use is Christopher Columbus and the African Holocaust: Slavery and the Rise of European Capitalism by Dr. John Henrik Clark. And when we look at where Columbus went on his 4 voyages, he never comes to the land that we call the United States of America, as I've said before. We see him going to Cuba in 1492, Cuba, the Bahamas, Hispaniola, where the Dominican Republic and Haiti is. 1494, West Indies. He goes into Puerto Rico and Jamaica. He conquers Jamaica. And then we know the British are going to take control over Jamaica. May 1498, Trinidad and Venezuelan mainland. 1504, Panama and Honduras. Okay. If you go to history.com, they have some good information there dealing with Christopher Columbus as well. So we go through and analyze the transatlantic slave trade also from its beginnings. What's the transatlantic slave trade? The forced journey of African people from Europe to Africa to the Americas. Trinkets from Europe were exchanged for Africans or used for money to purchase them. It lasts from the 1440s through 1865 or so, and even later in Brazil. We look at the Middle Passage as well, which is the leg of the triangular trade from Africa to the Americas, the New World. We deal with, there were at least 262 skills, trades, and crafts that African people had in this country from 1619 to 1865, at least 262 skills, trades, and crafts. The book, The Other Slaves, Mechanics, Artisans, and Craftsmen, that came out in 1978 by James Newton and Ronald Lewis, lays out all these skills, trades, and crafts. We look at Ghana, Songhai, and Mali, these 3 great West African nations. And Ghana was originally called Wagadu. Ghana goes back to about 300 BC in West Africa. Okay, so this is just a brief overview of some of the history that we deal with in this 10-week online class that I teach. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. All right. So you can register for this class at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. It's right on the homepage. You scroll down, you'll see it there. And I'll post a link here again. We have the link in the thread of this broadcast. As soon as you register, you can start watching content. We have bonus content you can watch. There's 15 bonus lectures you're going to get from me in digital format when you register for this class. And that's part of the Michael Imhotep Black History Month 15 DVD bundle pack. Okay. But you're going to get that in digital format when you register for this class. This class is on sale $80, regularly $130. We do the classes on Saturdays, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can watch from around the world. You can use this information with your children as well. The children can watch the class also. I would say the information is PG-13. You can order this DVD bundle pack here, if you like, from our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. It's 15 of my lectures. And there's one that deals with the origins of African American History Month as well. It's about a 3-hour presentation that I did. So that's on sale. That 15 DVD bundle pack's on sale, $100. And then on Sundays, I teach from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. So this second class picks up basically where the first class leaves off. In each class, we go through and analyze about a 10, 15, 20-year period of time. We start in 1803 with the Louisiana Purchase, which doubles the territory of the United States and increases the need for enslaved Africans. But the Louisiana Purchase happens because one of the reasons why is because the Haitians are beating the hell out of the French, and France is trying to raise money. So we have this class also as well. And when we look at the Civil War, Reconstruction, 1865, 1877, Jim Crow era, World War I, World War II, the Great Migration, 1915 and 1970. We look at the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power Movement. So both classes are on sale, $80 each. They're regularly $130 each. We have a bundle pack, and you can register for both classes for only $120. And once again, once you register for the class, you have access to it for forever, basically. So a year, 2 years from now, if you want to go back and watch the entire course, you'll still have access to it. Okay. So you can watch it at your own pace. You don't have to be present in class. In class, I do it virtually at our online school, but you see me, I don't see you. So you don't have to worry about, you can watch wearing pajamas and a bonnet or whatever you want to do. If you've taken classes with me before, my online classes with me before, email me at ahnshow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You get a 50% discount on the new classes and the bundle. Okay. Email me at ahnshow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. But I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips. So you're going to learn a lot. It'll keep you engaged. All right, look, we have to get out of here. Remember, the African. Also, if you like this type of information as well, you want to support the African History Network. $, the AHN Show through Cash App. $, the AHN Show through Cash App. Also through PayPal. PayPal.me/the AHN Show. We have the information right on the homepage of our website. And be sure to watch my show and listen to my show Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight Eastern Standard Time. Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the African History Network Show. I'm on 9, 10 a.m. the Superstation WFDF. And we broadcast on our social media platforms also when we're live on Facebook, the African History Network, YouTube, Michael Imhotep. You can listen to audio podcasts here or wherever you get your audio podcasts from. Search for the African History Network Show. And you can download the iHeartRadio app and search for the African History Network Show there, because we have a page. We have a channel on iHeartRadio. And you can listen to 9, 10 a.m. WFDF. You can listen to that station live through iHeartRadio also. All right, we have to get out of here. Remember, the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now, it's correct wrong behaviors, not